Before we get into it, if you value real battlefield knowledge drawn from history, subscribe to Battlefield of Survival, like this video, and leave a comment with which historical skill you want covered next. Now, let's get straight to the craft. How World War I scouts navigated hostile terrain without modern tools. World War I scouts operated in shattered landscapes where roads vanished, landmarks were destroyed, and maps were often outdated the moment shells hit the ground. Navigation was not theoretical, it was survival critical. A scout who got lost risked walking into enemy wire, friendly artillery zones, or patrols waiting in the dark. Their methods were simple, disciplined, and brutally effective, and every one of them can still be used today. How trench maps were read, memorized, and trusted over guesswork. World War I military maps were highly detailed, showing trench systems, contour lines, known enemy positions, and reference grids. Scouts did not stare at maps while moving. They studied them beforehand, memorized distances, angles, and terrain features, then moved with the map folded away. The key skill was translating a flat map into real ground. A ridge on paper meant a rise that blocked wind. A contour squeeze meant a steep climb. If a map showed a bend in a stream 300 meters ahead, the scout counted steps until that bend appeared. You can apply this today by practicing map memorization before moving. Study a map for 5 minutes, note 3 major terrain features and 2 distance markers, then navigate without looking again until you reach them. This builds confidence and prevents hesitation, the same discipline scouts relied on under fire. So, here's the thing. Pacing and distance counting actually replaced electronic measurement out in the field. Scouts would count distance by pacing, step after step. Every soldier knew exactly how many steps made up 100 meters under normal conditions, and they also learned how that number changed if they were going uphill, downhill, or even crawling. This skill was drilled into them over and over again. Even at night or in thick fog, they could estimate distance accurately enough to hit a rally point or an observation post. To use this technique today, you'll want to measure your own pace on flat ground first, then give it a go on uneven terrain. Just walk 500 meters and count your steps. Try it again, but this time with a loaded pack. This method really works anywhere GPS might fail, and, honestly, it doesn't rely on visibility at all. Compass work wasn't used on its own. It was always combined with reading the terrain. Back in World War I, scouts carried simple magnetic compasses, but those could be unreliable near metal debris or artillery fragments. The compass was more of a guide than a crutch. Scouts would use it to set a bearing, then follow terrain features that matched that bearing, like a ridgeline, a hedge, or maybe a drainage ditch. And if the terrain ever conflicted with the compass, the terrain always won. In practice, this means setting a bearing, then choosing a visible feature along that line and moving toward it. Once reached, choose the next feature. This leapfrogging method keeps movement controlled and prevents drift, especially at night. How night navigation relied on silhouettes, stars, and discipline. Most scouting happened after dark. Scouts learned to read the skyline. A lone tree, a church ruin, or a ridge silhouette was easier to see against the night sky than on the ground. When skies were clear, they used the North Star or familiar star patterns to confirm direction. They moved slowly, stopped often, and checked alignment constantly. You can train this by navigating familiar ground at dusk and night without a flashlight. Learn how objects appear in silhouette and how your depth perception changes. This skill matters when visibility drops and panic causes people to rush and lose direction. So, natural handrails kept scouts oriented even when they were under a lot of stress. Handrails were basically linear features, like roads, streams, trench lines and hedgerows, that could be followed without having to constantly check your bearings. Scouts would plan their routes to intersect or run parallel to these features. And honestly, even if they got disoriented, just hitting a handrail meant they could instantly figure out where they were again. You can actually apply this by planning your own routes so that you intentionally cross known linear features. If you're moving cross-country, for example, it's much better to aim to intersect a river or a road at a specific point, instead of just wandering about until you recognize something. Now, sound and wind direction were also used as navigational cues. Scouts were always listening, really. Artillery batteries, for instance, had these distinct rhythms. Rail yards, factories and troop movements all produced recognizable sounds, too. Wind direction carried these sounds, and interestingly also affected smell, which was another cue that often got overlooked. Sometimes a scout might realize he was too far east simply because the sound of friendly guns had shifted position relative to the wind. This can be practiced by learning the ambient sounds of an area. Spend some time identifying distant traffic, rivers, or maybe even industrial noise, and noting how they change with wind and terrain. How dead reckoning prevented total loss of position. Dead reckoning meant always knowing your last confirmed position and the direction and distance travelled since. Even if disoriented, a scout could backtrack mentally and physically. This required constant mental tracking, not just the occasional checking. Train this by narrating your movement internally. After each segment, ask yourself where you are relative to your start. This habit alone, honestly, separates trained navigators from lost wanderers. The most important factor was restraint. Scouts did not rush. They did not improvise wildly. They stuck to the plan unless terrain forced a change, and even then, changes were deliberate. Navigation failure usually came from impatience, not lack of tools. That lesson still applies. Slow movement, constant awareness, and methodical decisions outperform technology when conditions deteriorate. GPS fails, batteries die, signals disappear. World War I scouts operated with nothing but maps, compasses and trained senses in environments far worse than most modern survival scenarios. Their techniques are timeless because they rely on observation, measurement and discipline. If you want more deep historical survival knowledge like this, subscribe to Battlefield of Survival, like the video, share it with others who take history seriously, and leave a comment with the next topic you want explored.